to Maths on Radio, a program catalyzed and supported by National Council for Science and Technology Communication, Department of Science and Technology, New Delhi.
हमको आजकल क्यों होने लगा है प्यार मैथ से मेरे यार। अब डर है नहीं लगता, बस सीने नहीं छूटते, नींदें नहीं उड़ती, मिला है हमें हमारा चैन और करार। चाहे हो अलजेब्रा का वार, एरिथमेटिक की मार या स्टैटिस्टिक्स का बुखार, सब कुछ सुलझाने को है हम बिल्कुल तैयार। मैथ्स ऑन रेडियो ने किया है ये चमत्कार। मैथ से होने लगी है दोस्ती हमारी, अब है आपकी बारी, कर लीजिए तैयारी, क्योंकि मैथ्स ऑन रेडियो ने ली है ये जिम्मेदारी, करवा के रहेगी मैथ से यारी हमारी। अगर आपको भी करनी है मैथ से दोस्ती, तो सुनना न भूलिए मैथ्स ऑन रेडियो हर दिन ओनली ऑन 107.8 FM मास्टर रेडियो। आपके, जी हाँ, सिर्फ और सिर्फ आपके ज्ञान का डोज हर रोज।
Welcome to a fresh new episode on Maths on Radio Season 2, Maths and Sports. This program is supported by Department of Science and Technology. In this program, we look at actually applied math in a way that it's used in everyday life. So in Maths and Sports, we have basically looked at various sports people, various sports, and how maths has interacted with various sports and trainings. Today we have with us Dhanajay Mehendale.
Hello. Hello everyone.
Yeah, and Kaushal Shukl.
Hey, how are you?
So Dhananjay is basically an endurance athlete. So this is the new thing that we have introduced today, that for the first time we have an endurance athlete with us. So I think to begin with, Dhananjay, can you tell us a bit about what endurance athletes actually are?
See, basically I'm a swimmer, so I was actively into open water swimming, which is commonly also known as sea swimming. So when I got introduced to this sport, it was my coaches basically spotted my my propensity to swim longer distances, and that is where this idea of open water swimming came in. And usually the age limit for this in the Maharashtra circles is around 12. So approximately when I was in 6th standard, I was coaxed into doing the gateway to Sankrok to gateway swims, which are 5.5 kilometers. So that is where it all started. That is where I was introduced to the concept of endurance swimming, and it is a totally different ball game from sprinting as such.
Absolutely, that's precisely why for me this was a very important episode, because see, fundamentally when you look at athletes, like I used to do the 100-meter dash in my school. Okay, now when I was running, yeah, perhaps I was trying to shave that 1 second off.
Yeah.
But then it's still a 10-second sport.
Correct.
In case you talk about football, it's in a penalty shootout. It's a one shot interaction. The only moment of involvement is me hitting the ball.
Correct.
But in case of an endurance sport, okay, basically it's long drawn. Okay, and you have lots of time. I think lots of time, and especially, okay, I might add here, so Dhananjay is particularly very good with math. He's been a board topper.
Sort of.
In math. And so he's someone who's academically good with math, unlike most people here. I think Kaushal would like to add something on that.
Yeah, obviously. For me, I have never been good at math. So I think, how does that help, Dhananjay, while probably doing actually indulging in the sport?
See, I'll be frank about it. Like, doing maths in a bookish way and doing it and applying it in a sport is a completely different ball game. So you might be good in your papers, in your exams, but that necessarily might not translate into a good calculation ability when you're swimming or when you're pursuing any sport. But yeah, definitely it does help when you have to quickly calculate. Like, for example, we used to do 1500 meter swims. So those are like 30 laps of a 50-meter pool. So before you start off, you have an idea that, okay, I have to complete this in around 18 to 19 minutes. So that's the kind of thing that gets easier when you're kind of good at maths. So you can divide, multiply, and that's how it works.
So basically, when you we are trying to look at the mind here, okay? So when you actually were in the pool, okay, what goes on in your mind? Do these timings come up? Is there a track of time, or do you completely lose track of time and it's on the laps? Or what are you thinking?
So this is really interesting. You're just pushing me down into memory lane. But what used to happen was, of course, we didn't have a track of time, because even if you wear a watch, you can't possibly look at it while you're swimming. And the style we used to be freestyle, so there was no way you could look at your hand in the water. So what we used to practice while training was, the coaches used to have whistles of different sorts for pacing us. Like, if we are below the average speed that we are supposed to be at, there'll be a triple whistle. If we are above it and we need to slow down and conserve energy, there would be a double whistle. If we are going well, it'll be like, okay, fine, keep going. There'll be a single whistle. So that is how we used to that was the code that the exchange we used to follow.
That's really insightful, Kaushal. What do you think? Did you ever have a clue that they actually went by the whistles?
No, this is the first time I've come to know about this.
Usually my father, my parents used to be there quite often during my training also and during my competitions also. So they had an idea. So I was very used to my father whistling. So, and he used to pace the pool, the 50-meter pool, when I used to swim. So even though I was not in the adjacent lane, I used to always have my eyes on him and what he is reacting and how he is communicating with me. So that used to give me an idea about my overall speed.
So basically, let's talk about the math. So basically, there are like what you may call 3 time distance calculations that were happening by 2 people. One was you in the pool, and one is your coach or dad, as you say, outside. And you were basically calculating. So you had an optimum calculated.
Right.
An optimum speed,
and I had to meet that.
Then you had to meet that. But then there were also circumstances wherein you overdid it, and this is where it is interesting. And this is unlike, say, a 100-meter dash, because you can't overdo a 100-meter dash.
You have to just go all out.
You just have to go all out. Okay, so that's why this is more of, this is exactly why, I wanted this episode for maths and sports, because, this is typically a mathematical situation wherein you have one optimum and then going above it and below it is possible. So you basically have a bell curve. In which, you got to be at the peak.
Ends of the
you
curve,
got to be at the peak, but then you can hit the, the higher end and then burn out, and the lower end. Because I remember reading this in Lance Armstrong, wherein he basically talks about overdoing it and underdoing it. That's my exposure to it.
And basically, even if you talk about an endurance sport, like, for example, I mentioned the 1500 meter, it is ultimately made up of 30 chunks of 50-meter dashes. So if you break it down into 30 chunks, you can actually analyze every chunk in its own individual capacity. So you don't think of it that way when you look at a 1500-meter race. You don't think of it like as 30 different chunks. But when you're training, you have a particular target set by a coach. This is what you need to do for the first half, maybe the 1/3, the next 2/3, and the last dash has to be like this.
So Kaushal, coming from an engineering background, but isn't that derivatives? This is what he's talking about, right?
Absolutely. We never thought about it in the derivatives perspective, but yeah, technically it does boil down to that.
Absolutely, that's the beauty of maths and sports, right? I think Kaushal wants to add something here.
Yeah. So do you feel key if for students who are trying to study derivatives, so if such kind of situation is given to them as a part of a problem, do you think that will help?
Definitely. I think the practical application of derivatives has been the problem for students for like donkey's years, because we all go by a very theoretical approach. We don't really look at the application part. So as you said, if something like this is included in the syllabus as an example or as a case study, it will definitely help students understand what derivatives is all about.
Absolutely. Like, this is a classic derivatives example wherein you have a whole, you divide it into parts, play it in parts, and then every part actually has a different target. Like, as you mentioned, like, you would be, attacking in one, defensive in the other, just trying to be as neutral in another. So basically, this is the whole idea of breaking it into small parts, playing it by small parts. So you can imagine, and your entire swim between, a Gateway of India and Sunrock in this case, actually divide into finer parts.
Actually, you cannot divide an open water swim per se, because there are a lot of other factors that come into play, like the current, or maybe a ship goes past or something like that. So technically it might not be really easy to divide an open water swim, but yeah, when you're swimming in a pool, definitely.
Yeah, and also with an open water swim, then in that case, if you got to analyze an open water swim, again you got to break it into small parts in the analytical sense.
Perspective, totally, because at that time you have more time to analyze and to see where you're going. As I said, you have a watch, you can actually time yourself. So an open water swim is a totally different experience.
So let's look at that. Now, let me tell you, so this is a person who was in the sea for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Between Dharamtar and Gateway. So now you imagine on the coast at Dharamtar, what goes on in your mind? What is the target? What is the math? Are you thinking about the math? Are you thinking? Do you know that how many hours you are going to spend in the sea?
That's totally unpredictable. But you somehow look at around 8 to 10 hours.
Okay.
Given the fact that you have a trend analysis, people who have done it before, you probably look at that. And then you can say, probably I will take somewhere around these many number of hours. But again, I'll take you back to the drawing board and how the training used to happen. So imagine an Olympic-sized pool, and there are 8 lanes. It's a 50-meter pool. So the way we used to train was, we used to have training circles, like in the rectangles we used to swim.
Okay, so because when I swim, I basically do laps.
No, we never used to do that, because what happens is when you do a lap, you get a slight chance to rest at the wall, and we were not even allowed that.
Oh my God, that's just too stunning. So for a lazy swimmer like me, who barely reaches 50 meters, I think my end is at the 50 meter, and I go to the end, it's done.
And we used to basically go around the rectangle for hours together, and that probably used to be around 100 meters plus around 140 meters used to be the total distance, approximately, one rectangle. And that used to multiply and get 1 kilometer, and we used to break it down into kilometers. So the target
he was dynamically using a concepts of perimeter.
Exactly.
Again, meter to kilometer conversions, divisions.
Yes,
so this is maths everywhere in this.
And if we got lazy, the coach would usually punish us by asking us to swim diagonals also. So
okay.
Those dynamics also used to come into play.
So now he added some bit of geometry on that.
Absolutely.
And a Pythagoras theorem hitting him badly.
Absolutely.
So punishment is in terms of Pythagoras.
Absolutely. It always just has to maximize.
So you basically practiced in that form, and so during the swim, you're swimming. Now you were told by trend analysis that 8 to 10 hours.
Not just trend, but now, for example, a training kilometer would take 14 minutes approximately. That used to be our target. So if you look at the distance of Dharamtar Mumbai, it was 36 kilometers on paper, but it can vary, because if you have to avoid a current, if the navigator sees a current, it just goes haywire. So it might go to 38-39 kilometers also.
Okay, so those were basically advanced time distance space calculations, wherein you had a negative, so get a bad current. And
totally. So that's
not
in your hand.
He'll tell you about an episode wherein he was swimming at the same spot for some hours.
For about around 1.5 hours, I was at the same spot, and then a ship went past, and I was pushed back like almost a mile.
So back to where
I just started an hour ago. So that's how it is in the open water. But yeah, you have when you're training, you have a target. I have to swim in 8 hours, but that may not necessarily hold good when you're swimming actually in the sea.
Okay, how much of a havoc does that wreak with the mind? Like, as you know, we've rowed together on some distances, and when you start out, that time target matters.
That's really horrible. Like I really can't express this in words how it wreaks havoc, but trust me, it just plays on your psyche, and you have a particular time distance calculation in your head which goes haywire once something like this happens. So of course your momentum gets affected. You're not encouraged enough to keep pushing. So yeah, that comes into play at times.
Dhananjay, mathematically, when you get such kind of a hit, when you probably go back some distance, so how do you readjust your calculations after that?
You reboot. There's just one way to do it. You reboot and you start off again. Because we used to have a boat going along with us, so they would be telling me the time that you have swum for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. And they would tell me the distance to go. But at one point they spotted that I was not really responding to their calculations, so they stopped telling me how much is left. So it was on me. I had to keep bobbing my head up and looking at the shoreline and trying to figure out how much I have to cover and what time I've already covered. So that kind of gave me an idea. But as you said, when something like this happens, when you are pushed back a kilometer, you don't know how to react to it. I mean, you probably factor in another 20 minutes into your swim, hoping that the current will favor you at any particular point. But apart from that, you can't do anything more.
I'm sure it must be quite a setback. But I'm also sure that because you're so good with math, okay, you could quantify that setback. Okay,
Yeah.
Coming from a psychological perspective,
Correct.
calculating your hit is very, very important to kind of know what sorrow you're in.
Exactly.
This is
And in
pure
a crunch
psychology.
situation, it's very important to know that, okay, I'll be back by around 20 minutes, so fine, I have to figure out
Absolutely.
how to cover it up.
Absolutely. That's another thing. Also, did you use kilometers? Does that always, or is it you also, because sea distance is usually nautical miles, isn't it?
No, we used to use kilometers.
Okay.
So nautical miles aren't what usually sea swimming isn't counted in that in those parameters.
Okay.
So even if you see the English Channel or maybe the Park Strait or the Strait of Gibraltar, it's all in kilometers, or maybe miles in certain cases, but definitely not nautical miles.
Okay. So basically, then you were set back. Okay.
Yeah.
And now let's move further bit ahead. And you said that after a point of time you were actually looking at the shoreline. Now, of course, I've not been in the middle of the sea, and in the sea where like I've been on a ship, but I don't really think the shoreline moves much.
It doesn't move at all.
Exactly. So when the shoreline started actually enlarging,
I started to swim at 1:30 at night.
Okay.
And it took me 8 hours, so I reached at 9:30. It was morning. It was daybreak by around 6, and I could see the shoreline by around 7. So it wasn't really enlarging till 7. Till 7 I was in no man's land. I didn't know where I was going. And I'll tell you a small incident. I saw a very large ship on the horizon when I was swimming. And when you're swimming in the sea, you ride the wave sometimes.
Okay.
When you get a wave, you take advantage of it and try to maximize your momentum. So when you're on top of it,
you're actually using physics and maths
and maths, yeah,
right as you act.
exactly. So basically the blessings of gravity. So when you ride the wave, you basically get an advantage. You're at a vantage point. You can see further. You are at a higher point. So at that point, I saw a boat. I saw a very large ship at a distance, and it had minarets. So just like the.
Don't tell me you were calculating the distance between the minarets
No,
to figure out
not at all.
how close you were coming.
I wasn't that
You
deep.
know you can do that.
No, those minarets were similar to the gateway of India.
Okay.
And I thought that ship is gateway. I was so psychologically drained by that time. I was like, gateway to aage abhi. So I'll be reaching in an hour's time. And when I got closer, I saw it's a ship. And then beyond the ship, around 3 hours yet to go. That was the kind of calculation that I had in my mind. So it was emotionally draining when I saw that.
Yeah, that must be crazy. Kaushal wants to add something here.
Yeah, so when you say that must have been a blow to you.
Absolute body blow.
So with kind of you said probably 3 more hours. So did you in any way use mathematics to rationalize yourself at that moment? Ki probably actually 2 to 3 hours to go. Now again you must have now got. Did you rationalize yourself by using mathematics in any way?
Of course. See, I used to train for 8 hours at my peak in a swimming pool. So I knew my capacity. I knew I could do 8 hours without breaking sweat. So when my coaches told me that I have already done 5, and I know that there are 3 more to go, so I know for a fact that I can swim 3 hours more. So those calculations used to help. See, I have trained this much, I have to go this much. So that's the kind of.
So basically, ever since you decided to become an endurance athlete, you are always in the math. Like even when
Always.
because I've known that you basically used to go down to Juhu Beach,
Yeah.
walk in,
Exactly.
and then swim parallel to the beach.
Yeah, we used
for
to swim in and then we used to swim whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
distance,
Swim in, like
Yeah.
that's a perpendicular inside, and then
Exactly.
parallel to the beach. And
Parallel
how many
to the
rounds?
Till you got tired. So there was no count on the number of rounds when you're in the sea. When you're like, you wave your hand out to the coach, he'll be like 2 more, and I'll be like, okay, fine, I have to do it. So that's how it was.
Okay.
There was no limit on the number of rounds you're supposed to do, because the sea throws up challenges at any time. So you have to be prepared for maybe 150% of the distance instead of the 100%. So that always used to be the case.
Okay. So, I've heard that you haven't hit the pool for a while now.
For a while, yeah, it shows.
Well, our listeners cannot see, but
Yeah, sure.
when are you expecting to get back to the pool?
I hope in the near future, because after I did Dharamtar, I always had aspirations to do the English channel, the Park Straight. But then a few health issues grounded me, and then I got into academics. So the Indian system doesn't really allow you to pursue sports as much as you can pursue academics. But yeah, definitely it's a dream. I do practice at times, but it's never a serious practice. So yeah, probably once I get my career set, I'll probably get back to the pool and say, yeah, fine, I can probably just hit the English channel once for old time's sake.
Okay, so I might end with saying that in this week when Zahir Khan retired, so Zahir Khan happens to have seen Dhananjay train, okay? So
Yeah,
they have the same club, and Zahir Khan has actually come down to see Dhananjay train.
That was very early in his career, when Mumbai was playing Baroda at MIG. And we knew he was staying in the hotel above, so we went and knocked on his door. And I asked him, I was very small at that time, so I asked him, Zahir bhai, can you just come down and watch me train? It'll be an honor. I watched a match in the morning, so you can do that for me. He was like, sure, I'll try. After my dinner is done, I'll try and come and see you. And he actually came down and saw me, so it was quite a thing.
Yeah, that's quite a brilliant touch. I have goosebumps listening to that. But thank you so much, Dhananjay, for spending time with us. And Kaushal, as usual, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for having me and sharing my experience and taking me down memory lane after a very long time.
I hope it's been a pleasure listening for all of us here, and we have had a good time, and I'm sure our listeners will think the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
अर्ज किया है, मुलाहिजा फरमाइए।
इरशाद। सदियों से एक जंग चली आई है, सदियों से एक जंग चली आई है, मैथ्स और स्टूडेंट्स की कभी न बन पाई है।
क्या बात है, क्या बात है, दर्द है इसमें, दर्द है। मुकर्रर, मुकर्रर।
सदियों से एक जंग चली आई है, सदियों से एक जंग चली आई है, मैथ्स और स्टूडेंट्स की कभी न बन पाई है। न समझ आया हमें साइन कॉस थीटा, न समझ आया हमें साइन कॉस थीटा, इसी चक्कर में पापा ने खूब है पीटा। अलजबरा से आखिर क्यों दिल घबराता है, अलजबरा से आखिर क्यों दिल घबराता है, जीरो हमेशा हमारे हिस्से ही क्यों आता है। सारे प्रॉब्लम्स को ब्रैकेट में बंद करके, सारे प्रॉब्लम्स को ब्रैकेट में बंद करके आज मैथ्स से दोस्ती कर ली हमने, क्योंकि ये बात हमें अच्छे से समझ आई है, क्योंकि ये बात हमें अच्छे से समझ आई है। हिसाब किताब तो भैया जीवन की परछाई है।
वाह वाह, क्या बात है, क्या बात है।
कर्म हो या पैसा हो, सबका हिसाब चुकाना है, कर्म हो या पैसा हो, सबका हिसाब चुकाना है। इसमें कोई गड़बड़ हुई तो ईश्वर ने अपना प्रकोप दिखाना है।
वाह वाह, वाह वाह, सुभान अल्लाह।
दोस्तों, आपको हमारा ये कार्यक्रम कैसा लगता है, ये आप हमें बता सकते हैं हमारे ईमेल आईडी पर। हमारा ईमेल आईडी है radiomust@gmail.com। दोस्तों, फेसबुक पर जाकर आप रेडियो मस्ट कम्युनिटी रेडियो, ये हमारा फेसबुक का पेज भी लाइक कर सकते हैं, और हमारे तमाम जो एपिसोड है इन्हें सुनने के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पर भी जा सकते हैं mustradio.in। तो दोस्तों, सुनते रहिए। मैं हूं आपका साथी प्रशांत, लेता हूं आपसे इजाजत इसी वादे के साथ कि अगली बार कुछ और एक रोचक जानकारी आपके लिए लेकर आऊंगा।
Maths on Radio, a program catalyzed and supported by National Council for Science and Technology Communication, Department of Science and Technology, New Delhi.